of 2026, the latest widely cited digital figures show that India has 806 million internet users at the start of 2025, along with 491 million social media user identities. At the same time, HubSpot's State of Marketing 2026 reported that 22% of marketers said that moving beyond text-only content into visual and audio formats was their most effective content diversification move in 2025. So that tells us something very clear. More people are online, more content is being consumed every day, and the visual communication is becoming more and more important than ever. And that is exactly why this topic matters right now. Most people do not want to read long blocks of text unless they really need to. They prefer information that feels quick, clear, and easy to understand. That is why infographics become so useful. They help turn plain information into something more visual, more engaging, and easier to remember. The best part is that today, creating infographics is no longer limited to professional designers. Even beginners can create clean and useful visuals with the help of free tools. So now that we're clear about why this topic matters, let's move on to discuss what we will cover today. Why infographic tools matter. They help students, creators, and professionals present information in a clearer and more visual way. Best free tools to explore. We will look at the free tools that can turn simple ideas into clean and useful infographics. Tools for written content. Some tools work best when you already have notes, summaries, or text ready. Tools for step-by-step workflow. Some tools are better for showing process, sequence, or how something works. Tools for chart and numbers. A few tools are especially useful when turning small data sets into visual charts and comparisons. How to choose the right tool. We will understand which tool is the best based on the type of infographic you want to create. Final goal of the session. The aim is not just to know the tool names, but to understand which one fits best for you. So before we move on, here is something exciting. So if you're someone who wants to build real job-relevant skills in generative AI, machine learning, and intelligent automation, this program is genuinely helpful. In partnership with Simplilearn, it is designed to take you from the fundamentals to practical applications, so you do not just learn concepts, you also work on hands-on projects, guided exercises, and industry tools that help you build confidence. You also get to learn from industry experts and gain exposure to advanced topics like Gen AI, Agentic AI, Deep Learning, NLP, MLOps, and intelligent systems. What makes it even more valuable is that it's focused on helping you apply AI in the real business and workplace scenarios, and not just theory. So whether you want to grow in your current job role and move into AI-driven work or build a future-ready profile, so this program gives you the skills, practice, and professional credibility to move in that direction. So now that we have a clear direction for the session, let us begin with a quick beginner-friendly question. So what is the main benefit of an infographic? Is it A, quick visuals, B, longer text, C, only for experts, or D, more confusion? Let us know your answers in the comment section below. So these days, almost everyone is creating content in some form. Students are making assignments and project summaries. Working professionals are creating reports, presentations, training documents, and social posts. Small business owners are trying to explain their products and services and ideas in a way that people can understand quickly. And the simple truth, long paragraphs are harder to consume. Clean visuals are easier to understand. And this is exactly why infographic tools have become useful. They help you turn information into something people can scan fast and remember better. So before choosing any tool, there are a few things that really matter. First, it should be easy to use, because if a tool is too confusing, most beginners will leave it in 5 minutes. Second, it should save time. A good tool should not make you work harder than doing the design manually. Third, it should give you a clean layout, because an infographic is only helpful when it looks organized. Fourth, it should let you edit the output. Sometimes the first version is good but not really perfect. And finally, the free version should still be useful, not just a log demo. So now that we know what makes the tool worth trying, let us start with one of the most familiar options for most people. So let's begin with Canva, because for many people this is the easiest entry point. Canva is already widely used for presentations, social media posts, posters, and design templates. So what makes it useful for infographics is that it already has free infographic maker and also offers design assistance through Magic Design. So instead of building everything from zero, you can start with a ready-made structure and then adjust it based on your topic. That makes Canva a strong choice for beginners, students, and content creators who want something fast and visually clean. The best part is that it does not feel intimidating. You can open it, choose an infographic layout, type your content, change a few colors and icons, and then you already have something presentable. So if your goal is speed, simple editing, and attractive templates, Canva is one of the strongest starting points. So now that we have covered a beginner-friendly option, let's move on to a tool that's very useful even if you have a lot of text or a document ready. Now let's talk about Piktochart, and this is where things get a little more interesting for people who already have notes, reports or raw written content. Piktochart is very useful because it can take pasted content and even uploaded files like PDF, docx and txt and turn that content into a visual format much faster. So that means if you already have a topic written down, you do not need to build the first structure from scratch. So this tool helps you create the first version for yourself and then you can adjust it. So this makes Piktochart a great option for teachers, marketers, office teams and students who already have written material and want to convert it into something visual. So while Canva can feel like a broad design playground, Piktochart feels more focused on turning information into a proper infographic quickly. So now that we're clear on text-heavy workflow, let's especially useful when your content is explaining steps, ideas, processes, and simple visual thinking. Now let's look at Napkin, and this one is a little different from the others. Napkin is designed around a very simple idea. You paste your text and it helps turn that text into visuals. And it's especially good when your content is not just data but an explanation. So for example, if you want to explain a process, a framework, a list of ideas, a comparison, or a flow of something step by step, Napkin can be very helpful. And another strong point is that it supports exporting visuals into formats like PPT, PNG, SVG, and PDF, and it also offers a free plan with some limits. So if your goal is not just a pretty poster but a clean visual explanation that you can place inside a presentation or a report, Napkin becomes very useful. So that means that Napkin is great for trainers, consultants, teachers, and anyone who wants to explain ideas visually without spending hours arranging shapes manually. So now that we have a strong idea to visual tool, let's move on to an option that feels much more structured and report friendly. Next, let's talk about Venngage. So this tool is very useful when you want your infographic to look a little more formal and structured. Venngage offers a free infographic maker, free templates, and also an AI infographic generator that helps you organize sections, headlines, and visuals from your input. So because of that, Venngage feels often suitable for business-style content, internal reports, timelines, process visuals, and professional summaries. So if Canva feels broad and creative and Piktochart feels document-driven, Venngage feels more like a structured communication tool. So it's also a good pick for people who want their infographic to look polished, organized, and easier to present in a workplace setting. So now that we have looked into a more formal tool, let's move into one that becomes especially useful when your infographic depends heavily on numbers, charts, and data. So now let's move on to Infogram. So this tool is especially useful when your infographic includes a lot of numbers, charts, maps, or data-heavy content. Infogram focuses strongly on visual storytelling through data. It offers AI-supported visual creation, chart suggestions, interactive visuals, templates, and many chart types. So if your content is based on survey results, market numbers, business metrics, school research, comparison data, or location-based information, Infogram becomes a strong choice. This is important because not every infographic is the same. Some are idea-based and some are text-based and some are strongly data-based. And for the data-based infographics, a tool that handles charts well can save a lot of time and make the final result more trustworthy and easier to follow. So now that we've covered 5 strong options, let us bring everything together and make the choice easier. At this point, the biggest question is not which tool is best overall. The real question is which tool is best for your need. So if you want an easy template or smooth editing, Canva is a smart choice. If you already have written notes, an article, or a document and want it to be turned into visual faster, Piktochart is a better fit. And if you want to explain a process, frameworks, or a set of steps, Napkin is very helpful. And if you want a more formal report-style visuals, Venngage is a strong option. And if your content depends heavily on charts, numbers, and data storytelling, Infogram makes more sense. So instead of trying every tool for every task, it's smarter to match the tool to the kind of infographic that you actually want to create. So now that the comparison is clear, let's look at a simple method that you can follow to make better infographics no matter which tool you choose. So no matter which tool you choose, the process should stay simple. So start by deciding the number one message that you want people to remember. Then collect the most important points because too much text makes the design heavy. After that, group the information into sections, for example, problem, solution, benefits, and result. Then choose a layout that fits the content. A timeline works for history, a step-by-step layout works for process, a comparison layout works for 2 options, and a chart-based layout works for numbers. So once the first version is ready, edit the wording so it becomes shorter and clearer. And finally, check whether someone can understand it in 10 seconds. And that is a very powerful test. If people need too long to understand it, the infographic is probably trying to say too much. So now that we know the right process, let's talk about the few common mistakes that people should avoid. A lot of people make the same mistakes while creating infographics. The first mistake is adding too much text. An infographic is not a blog article. The second mistake is using too many colors. That makes the design look noisy. And the third mistake is choosing random icons that do not support the message. The fourth mistake is forcing the charts where the charts are not needed. The fifth mistake is trusting the first output blindly. These tools save your time, but they still need your judgment. And you still need to check the wording, remove clutter, and improve the order and make sure that the message is correct. So the tool can help you start faster, but the final clarity still depends on you. So now that we've covered the mistakes, let's move on to the demo part of this topic. So now that we have understood why these tools matter, let's move into the hands-on part and see how these tools actually work in a simple and practical way. In this section, I will take a topic, enter a prompt, and paste content into the tool, and then show you how that tool turns plain information into an infographic. So this will help us understand which tool is best for each kind of use. Now that the approach is clear, let's begin with the first tool. So as you can see, I have Canva open here. So I've started off with Canva because this is usually the easiest tool for beginners. So the reason that I'm starting with this is simple. It gives us ready layouts and it feels easy to use, and it also helps us turn simple content into a clean visual very quickly. So for Canva, let's use this particular topic. So you move on to the Canva AI section here and type 5 daily habits for better focus. So include 5 sections in short points. So please type the prompt as follows here. So as you can see here, the tool is getting one clear topic, 5 simple points, and one closing note. So the title becomes the main heading, each point becomes a visual block, and the closing note becomes the final takeaway. So this is why the output looks cleaner when the input is already organized. So what makes Canva useful is that it gives a strong starting design very quickly. So there is no need for you to spend much time thinking about spacing, colors, or arrangement in the beginning, as you can see the results over here. So the first result can be taken and then improved with the small edits. So for someone who wants something quick and neat and beginner friendly, this is a very comfortable place to start. Now that we have a clear idea about template friendly and easy starting tool, let's move on to a tool that's even more useful when the written content already exists and needs to be turned into a visual draft quickly. So now let's move on to Piktochart. So this tool is very useful when there are already written notes, a summary, or even full content, and the goal is to shape it into a proper infographic. So for Piktochart, let's use this topic: benefits of drinking enough water every day. So what you should do is head over to Pikto AI over here, and under tell us what to create, type the following prompt. So create an infographic titled followed by, so the prompt is as follows over here. So since this tool also allows document upload or pasted text, it can also be used as follows. So let me go ahead and type benefits of drinking enough water. So this example is again simple and structured. There is one clear title, 5 direct points, and one short summary at the end. So that makes it easier for the tool to divide the information into sections. So this type of tool is especially useful when the written content is already ready and the first version of infographic needs to come together faster. So here the tool is doing more than just draft work by taking the content and giving it a visual arrangement. So that saves time because every content box does not need to be built manually from zero. So now that we've seen a tool that works well with ready written content, let's move on to something slightly different. We shall now look at a tool that is very useful when the content is written as a step-by-step process or a step-by-step flow. Now let's take a look at Napkin. So this tool is very useful when the goal is to explain a process, a sequence, or a flow of an idea. Let us now give it something that feels more like steps. So for Napkin, let's use this topic: how to improve daily focus. So let's go ahead and type your idea. So how to improve my daily focus, followed by, so the prompt as you can see is as follows. So this time the tool is not getting just random points, it's getting a sequence, and that is very important because when the content is written clearly as step 1, step 2, step 3, the tool can understand that this is a process. So that usually leads to a much better visual workflow. So this is useful because sometimes the need is not a poster style infographic. Sometimes the goal is to explain how something moves from one stage to another. So in that case, process-based visuals work much better. So this tool becomes especially strong when the topic is a workflow, a routine, or a system, or even a step-by-step explanation. So now that we're clear about process-style infographic creation, let's move ahead and look at a tool that gives a much more formal and structured infographic look. So now let's move on to Venngage. So this tool is a good choice when the infographic needs to feel a little more professional, slightly more formal, and more suitable for reports, business communication, or organized information sharing. So for Venngage, let's use this topic: why time management matters for students. So this is the prompt for the same, and I'm going ahead to generate the design. So this particular example uses a topic that feels educational and practical. Each point is kept short because short points work better in infographics. So if a point becomes too long, the design starts to feel overcrowded. So one simple rule works well here. The clearer and shorter the point, the stronger the infographic. So this tool feels useful when something more polished and structured is needed from the beginning. So for a classroom visual, a business style summary, or a report graphic, this kind of layout works well. So now that we have seen a more formal infographic style, let's move on to the final type of demo. So we shall now look at a tool that works especially when the infographic depends on numbers and data. So now let's move on to Infogram. So this tool becomes very useful when the content is not just text-based data, but number-based. So here, instead of giving only one written points, let's give a small data that can be turned into a chart-based infographic. So for Infogram, let's use this topic: how students spend their daily time. So what you people have to do is head over to library, and in all projects you will have create with AI. So then you can go and conveniently type in your prompt. So as we had discussed, the topic will be how students spend their daily time. So let's go and type that: how students spend their daily time. Reading one. Yeah. So with that being done, let's go ahead and generate. So this is different from the earlier tools because here the visual strength comes from the numbers. So this tool is getting categories and values, so it can turn it into a chart or a comparison. So this is useful when the audience needs to understand a pattern quickly. So instead of reading all the numbers one by one, they can simply look at the chart and understand the comparison faster. So this is why chart-based infographic tools are useful. They can help turn small data into something much easier to understand. So if the topic includes numbers, comparisons, survey results, or time breakdowns, this type of tool makes much more sense. So now that we have completed all the major hands-on examples, let us bring everything together and make the final understanding very simple. So now that we have completed the topic, one thing should feel very clear. A good infographic is not just about looks, it's about making information easier to understand. And that is why these free tools matter. They can help turn ideas, notes, steps, and data into something clearer and more useful. The biggest takeaway is simple. You do not need to be a designer or create stronger infographics. You just need a clear idea, organized content, and the right tool. And now that we're done with the discussion, let's move ahead and start exploring the tools one by one. Also, keep learning with Simplilearn.